Khi chúng ta chuyển file từ Premiere qua DaVinci, vì một vài lý do như thuật toán phần mềm hay các file dựng bị trùng tên, mất time code, từ đó, khi import vào DaVinci, timeline của chúng ta có khả năng bị xô lệch khiến các file dựng không còn ở vị trí được chính xác như trong Premiere. Từ đó, chúng ta có một bước gọi là Conform file. Conforming là bước chúng ta điều chỉnh đồng bộ file từ các phần mềm khác nhau để tạo ra một timeline mới hoàn chỉnh và chính xác. Mình thấy trên YouTube có anh Darren làm khá chi tiết về chủ đề này, nên mình xin phép biên tập lại và dịch bằng tiếng Việt để share cho mọi người.
Hi, my name's Darren Mostyn, and in this episode I'm going to show you how to go from Adobe Premiere with your edit into DaVinci Resolve ready to start grading. And I'm going to show you, if you're an absolute beginner, exactly how to do that process. It's really simple, but it's not always a smooth ride. So I'm going to show you some of the things that you might come up against and exactly how to fix them. So let's go and take a look. So we're in Adobe Premiere, and what I want to do in this first part is to show you, as an absolute beginner, how easy it is to take this timeline and send it to another system, and in our case that's going to be DaVinci Resolve ready to start grading. So we've got our sequence down here. It's kind of cuts, regular cut type sequence. There's a dissolve coming up here, as you can see, and there is also something happening down here that is a picture-in-picture type thing, so we need 2 layers for that. And that's the essence of the program. So we want to get this information to DaVinci Resolve in as quick and easy way as possible. Now, the best way to do that is to export an XML. An XML contains all of these edit decisions. Every time I've made an edit in here, the XML knows where that is, and it knows which file name the clip belongs to. So it's going to list all these clips in the order they appear with the correct time codes, and it will give me, on this one, for example, video layer 2. So we've got a video layer 2 here. So that information will come across in the XML as well. And an XML is an industry standard, so it's a common way of exchanging edit information between different systems. It will also take across things like speed changes, resizes, audio levels, effects, and how many video tracks you've used and how many audio tracks, things like that. So how do we actually export that? Well, we go up to File, and we say Export Final Cut Pro XML. Don't worry that it says Final Cut Pro, it's irrelevant. It's an XML file. XML files can talk to many different systems. So just take the default, and what we're going to do, by default it gives you the title name of your sequence, and I'm just going to put on the end of here for grade so we know what it is, and I'm going to say save. And that is now exporting out a XML of my timeline. It's not exporting any media, it's just taking the information from the timeline, the metadata. So all we have to do now is switch to whatever system we want to go to. So in our case, that's DaVinci Resolve. And in DaVinci Resolve, you have a media pool. So all the clips that we want to use for the grade need to be sat inside this media pool. DaVinci Resolve will not work if those clips are not in there. So in Adobe Premiere, to import material, you open a bin and say File, Import. Whereas in Resolve, you have the media pool at the bottom, and at the top, you're browsing your hard drives, and you literally drag and drop the clip or the clips that you want to work with. But I'm going to show you an easy way of doing it. So if we go straight to our edit page, so we've got absolutely nothing here. This is a blank project, nothing going on, so it's a brand new project. I'm going to right click in here. Okay, this is also the media pool, but a sort of smaller version of it. And I'm going to say Timeline, Import, XML. I'm going to point to the XML that we just created and say Open. And what happens now is we get this dialog box. So Resolve is being intelligent here. It's having a look at that XML and saying, what do I want to do with it? So the source file, the actual XML, is here. Okay, the import timeline is the one from Premiere. So there was 2 in there, so it's picked the right one. The timeline name, it just gives it the same default name as you've imported. And the master timeline start time code, it's saying is 01 hours. That's actually what the default is here in my edit page. What we're going to do is override that. So if I say automatically set project settings, it will override this start time code, because in Premiere, our time code started at 00 hours. You don't have to worry about it too much. So I'm automatically going to set the project settings. That will also look at the frame rate. I'm going to automatically import the source clips into the media pool. So Resolve's going to do it for me. It's going to look at the XML, it's going to see which clips are used in Premiere, and it's going to automatically bring them into the media pool for me. And it's also going to use the sizing information. So when we did that picture-in-picture, we must have done a resize. So I'm going to bring that information across because the XML has saved that information. My timeline resolution is 1920 by 1080. That has been taken from the Premiere sequence settings that I had. And don't worry about this bit down here, mixed frame rates. We don't need to worry about that. So let's just say OK. And that's it. It's done. It's as simple as that. So we now have all our cuts in the timeline ready to go. So these can now be graded in Resolve by simply clicking on the color page. Okay, and I can now go ahead and just simply start grading these shots. So really, really simple way of bringing them in. Now, that is a very easy way of doing it, and that is all you need to take away as a beginner. What I want to do now is move on to a more advanced part and have a look at when things don't go quite to plan. So if we have a look at our picture-in-picture, it's actually not worked. Okay, so what I want to do in the next section is show you how to fix this and go into a little bit more advanced work when we're working with more complex timelines. So I hope you're enjoying this episode so far and you're learning a lot from it. These episodes don't make themselves. I put a lot of work into these, so there's a lot of preparation. I have to build those timelines to show you all the things that can go wrong and try and explain it the best I can so you get the best experience while you're watching my episodes on YouTube. It takes me a long time to make. It's going to take you no time at all to give it a thumbs up, hit the subscription and hit the notification. Thank you very much. So let's have a look at what went wrong with the XML when we had a look at this picture-in-picture in Resolve. So if we check our sequence settings, we go sequence settings up here, and we see that we are set to 1920 by 1080. So this is a HD regular timeline. Now our footage is made up of a combination of Ultra HD, 2K and 4K footage. And Premiere can handle that quite happily. So if I just take any clip here, this is a 3840 pixels by 2160. So it's Ultra HD. I can press in, let's do a mark out, and if I just drag and drop that onto the timeline, what Premiere will do is automatically scale it to HD resolution. So Premiere has two different ways in which it can resize images. So if I right hand click on this, you see that it's currently set to scale to frame size, but there's also this option here of set to frame size. Now, when we're on scale to frame size, what Premiere does is it automatically rescales it to be HD, but the effect control doesn't show anything in the scaling. So the scaling is still at 100% because it's rasterizing the image. So it's kind of virtually bringing it into HD resolution instead of Ultra HD resolution. Now, if I change that and right click on here and say set to frame size, you see now that the scaling has become 50%. So it's now correctly scaling the image from Ultra HD down to a HD size. So this one is going to give you much better quality. The set to frame size is going to give you much better quality. So the reason the XML didn't work on the picture-in-picture was because the XML was reading the information incorrectly. So let's have a look. If we right-hand click on here, you can see that we're set to scale to frame size. And let's take a look at the effect properties. And you can see we've got on positioning, we've got some position movement, obviously to create our left and right images. And the scaling is set to 50%. Now at first glance that would seem correct, but in actual fact, this was an Ultra HD image, and so it should be 25%. So let me change the scaling properties. I'm going to say set to frame size, which is the correct way to do it, and also will give you better quality image. And you now see that 50% scaling is actually this big. So what we need to do is set this to be half of that again, so it's 25%. And now it's correct. Now if we'd have set this to set to frame size to start with, we would have gone straight to 25% with our image to create the picture-in-picture anyway. You can set to frame size to be a default. So if I go to Premiere Preferences and go to Media, you can see that our default media scaling is currently scaled to frame size. So the first thing you want to do before you start a project is set to frame size, not scale to frame size. This is going to give you better quality images and it's going to make sure your XMLs work correctly. So that's why the XML came across, because the XML actually had a scaling of 50 in here, not 25 that it should have had. So the other reason that all these other clips worked fine, if we just flick to Resolve. So back in Resolve, if we go to our edit page, you can see here's the XML that was brought in, and all the images are correct, even though they were set to scale to frame size. And the reason they're correct is because in the preferences here, mismatched resolution files is scale entire image to fit. So it's automatically going to resize the Ultra HD stuff into HD in Resolve, no matter what the XML says. So back into Premiere, and that should explain what was going on there. So just to recap, set to frame size is going to give you better quality and your XML is going to come across correctly. So that's how to export a basic timeline. Let's take this up a gear now. I'm going to go to this second sequence, and we've got a lot more going on in here. Now, when this sequence was built, the preferences were set to, in here, they were set to frame size. Okay, so the default media scaling is set to frame size, not scale. So we're getting better quality, and we know our XML is going to be far more successful. Now, we've got just basic cuts going on here. We've got a dissolve here. We've got multiple layers. So we've got 3 video layers going on this one. Over here, we've got, has this got anything on it? Nope. Keep going through. And these are just basic cuts. We could tidy this up a little bit. This is obviously a cutaway sitting on top of another image, but the XML is going to handle it fine. So in this clip here, this is GoPro footage, and what we've done here is we've got a scale of 65, but we've also got repositioning, and what I've done is try to get the edge of the bowl at the top, and I tried to chop off the excess table down the bottom, but also I wanted to line this edge with the edge of the screen, and to do that I had to rotate -1 degree. All right, so it's just another thing for the XML to have to handle. So we go through here. What else have we got going on? So right, so the picture-in-picture in here is more complex, so it's got to move on it. So I'll just play that through. And again, we want all that to come across exactly correct in the XML. This shot here's got a lens flare on it, so we've got a bit of an effect going on there. I'm going to show you what happens when you export with a lens flare on there. That's a Premiere lens flare. Okay, and coming in, oh, by the way, we've got a timeline marker here, so let's just see what that says. It says frame this shot better. Okay, so we've already done that. And then I've got a clip marker here, so let's see what that says. Zoom out, not too much. Okay, so let's play that through. Have we zoomed out? I'm just checking my effects. So this one's actually got a dynamic move on it already. And this shot here has got a speed ramp on it. So just to show you, that's going to come across in the XML. And there we go. All right, so I think it goes from, I don't know, 24% or something, and then it just kicks up to 50% there. That's it. So what we're going to do is export an XML. So that's the first thing we're going to do. So we say File, Export, Final Cut Pro XML. And I'm going to send that to my XML folder. And I'm going to call it for grade again. So it's O2 sequence. Press save. And that's done. So we've got a translation report here. So let's just have a look at what that says. And so the XML report is just a simple text file. So if I click on it, you can see that it says here, sequence 02 prem to resolve sequence at video track 3 effect lens flare on clip, whatever it's called, has not translated. So that's absolutely fine. We know that Resolve is not expecting to see that lens flare via the XML. So the good thing is any effects that you've got on there, you will get a report about what's getting transposed across and what's not. But what I'm also going to do is an export of this sequence. And the reason I'm going to do that is because I want to manually check all of these effects. So this might be absolutely critical how that moves. I want to make sure that it's pixel for pixel accurate. So I'm just going to do an export of this sequence. Let's just call it, let's put it into our reference file folder. And I'm going to press save. And I'm also going to put burnt in timecode on there. So let's just bring down here, go to my timecode overlay, which is already selected. And that's going to put the timecode of my timeline on there for me. So it's always good for a reference file. That. So let's just export that out. And then we can switch to Resolve and import the XML. So we're back in Resolve. We're on the edit page. Here's the XML from earlier. I'm going to create a new bin actually and call it XMLs. And I'm going to put the original one in there. And then I'm going to go to this bin here. And I'm going to right click as we did before. Timeline import AFEDL, XML, DRT, whatever we want to bring. So here's our second XML. Let's open that up. Same dialog box as before. We're going to keep all the settings the same, particularly use sizing information. Let's say okay, so that's a 1080 timeline. And there is our new XML. So we've just looking good initially. We've got our 3 layers, 3 video layers going on. It looks pretty much how I remembered it in Premiere, but let's have a look what's going on. So this all looks pretty good until we get to the 4K stuff. And yeah, we've got quite a big problem going on here. So we've got here, there's our move, which is correct on our picture-in-picture, but the image scaling is completely out. And the reason for that is because of this preference here. So we need to change the input scaling from scale entire image to fit to be center crop with no resizing. And with no resizing, that means any sizing information is coming from the zoom here, okay? So it's coming from our XML. So if I press save now, what will happen is we don't get an automatic resizing, and the images go to how they were in Premiere. So let's have a look through, particularly this one where we did a little bit of a rotate as well. So we can actually see the rotation angle on there is set to 1, which is correct. So I think we're in good shape, but how do we check everything accurately? I mean, we've got some slow motion going on down here with speed ramps. So we need to check things like that are good. Let's just play that back. And it looks like we've got the speed change in there, so that's good. But this is why we made that reference file. So we exported a file with timecode burnt in, and we're going to use that to check our edit has come across correctly with the XML. Now there's a few ways of doing this, but I'm going to show you the easiest way. If I go to my media pool, I'm going to right hand click here and say new bin, and I'm going to call this reference or ref. And oh, sorry, I've done that inside the XML folder. So to get rid of that, you just pull it up to the master file, and there it is. Now it's outside of that bin, and we can go and find it, which is in here, our reference file, and it was 2A. I'm going to drag that into here. I'm going to go to my edit page. And what I'm going to do is on this pull down here, you've got something called offline. And if I press offline, I can drag any clip or any sequence into this viewer here. And because this was set to offline, what it's doing is it's automatically going to line up with the time code that I'm currently at. So it matches the time code on my timeline. So we're at 140.06. We can see here from the burnt in time code that the source clip is at 140.06. It's not a source clip, it's a reference clip. And because we brought it in with this mode on, that's why it aligns. So when I move this timeline, the clip moves in sync with whatever I'm doing. So we can now go through shot by shot and check it's lined up. And we can see that really easily there, that all these shots line up. So I'm just pressing my up and down arrow keys. I'm just going through each shot. Here's the shot that we lined up with our 1 degree rotation. That's all looking good. And the one I'm keen to see is the picture in picture, and that is perfectly aligned. So it's really come across really well. There's our lens flare that we know that we can't bring in. So all we've got to do now is go into our effects and add our own lens flare. So we can do that quite easily. Go to our effects library. We can go here, add a lens reflection maybe. Whatever we want to do. And you'll also see the markers come across. So it says frame shot better, which is what the sequence marker said in Premiere. And our clip marker has come across as well. So it says zoom out, not too much. So this was a zoom. Let's just see if that's come across, which it has perfectly. And the last thing is our speed ramp. So if I just zoom in to our timeline here and highlight our clip, and if I press Command R, we can see our retime here. So it's 24% to start with, then 50, and then 50. So that's perfect. So that's exactly what we wanted. So it's replicated the speed change perfectly. You sometimes get 1 or 2% mismatch on this, but generally it's in a good place, and you can always override this and manually make adjustments to that. So I'm really pleased with how well that's come in. Everything's looking really good. So don't forget, it's set to frame size in Premiere, and in DaVinci Resolve, you want in your preferences here to be center crop with no resizing, and that way your XMLs will come in really well. And all that's left to do now is switch to the color page. There's all the clips ready to grade. So I hope that's going to help you have a much smoother ride when you're conforming from Premiere into DaVinci Resolve. Look after yourselves, and I'll see you in the next episode.
Ngoài cái cách của bác Darren ra ấy, thì mình còn một cách nữa mà mình hay sử dụng mà mình muốn chia sẻ tới các bạn. Đầu tiên với cách của mình ấy, thì mình sẽ import footage trước. Mình chọn cái USB này. Khi mà chọn cái USB này, DaVinci nó sẽ tự động tạo cho mình những cái folder ở trong này, giống như kiểu cái folder gốc ấy, để mình quản lý file. Sau khi mà có footage thì mình sẽ import timeline XML, timeline. Ok, mình chọn dance, import. Mình sẽ bỏ cái automatic import này đi, bởi vì mình đã import cái footage này rồi. Nếu mà bây giờ mình chọn cái này nữa thì phần mềm có thể nó sẽ tự động import thêm và nó sẽ nhảy linh tinh ấy, làm cho cái file của mình nó bị loạn. Cái resolution này mình sẽ để nó làm Full HD thôi. Các bạn làm màu thì các bạn nên chỉ cần để nó là 1080 là được rồi. Khi nào xuất ra ấy, thì các bạn set lại là 4K là ok. Đó, ở đây nó sẽ báo là một vài cái file của mình đang không nhận thì kệ nào. Tổng quan cái timeline một chút. Đó, timeline của mình. Ông editor dựng quá trời layer. Bên dưới này thì có một thanh audio. Thì mình sẽ dọn dẹp một chút. Ở đây mấy cái file gain này thì mình không dùng, mình xóa nó đi. Rồi, các bạn thấy là mọi thứ nó đã gọn gàng hơn rồi. Sau khi mà có cái timeline như thế này rồi nhá, thì các bạn vào đây, Master, tạo cho mình cái bin mới tên là rep. Ở đây thì mình đã render một cái file rep rồi, gọi là reference. Ôi, chết nhanh quá. Các bạn vào as offline reference clip thì các bạn sẽ có cái file này. Các bạn nhìn cái biểu tượng offline của nó. Đó. Rồi qua đây. Sang bên này là timeline. Các bạn mở cái media pool lên. Rồi timeline này. Nếu mà không có cái icon này thì các bạn vào đây. Rồi chọn cái display stack lên. Chuột phải, file in media pool. Rồi vào đây, timeline, link offline reference, dance. Các bạn mở cái offline lên. Đó. Giống như bác Darren thôi. Nhưng với mình thì mình sẽ hay sử dụng một cái chức năng khá là hay. Các bạn chuột phải vào đây nhé, thì nó sẽ có các cái thanh công cụ cho mình làm việc, chẳng hạn như là whip dọc, hoặc là whip ngang. Đấy, whip xéo nữa này. Đó. Thì ví dụ trong trường hợp các bạn nhìn trực quan hai cái màn hình như này thì nó sai một vài frame thì rất là khó nhìn. Thì khi mà có cái whip này, các bạn có thể make sure rằng cái frame hình của mình nó đúng chính xác 100%. Và cái chức năng mình hay dùng ở đây là different. Đó, các bạn nhìn này, hình của mình nó chính xác thì nó sẽ hiện như này. Mình đảm bảo rằng nó chính xác 100% so với những cái bản offline các bạn gửi cho mình. Vậy thôi, thì mình cứ để nó play thôi. Đó, các bạn nhìn này, các bạn thấy không? Nó đang bị chợp một vài frame. Các bạn vào trim edit mode này. Rồi các bạn kéo frame cho mình làm sao cho nó trùng lại với nhau là được. Này. Đó, các bạn thấy không? Nói chung là do thuật toán giữa hai phần mềm DaVinci và Premiere nên là việc đọc speed giữa hai phần mềm nó sẽ bị khác nhau. Nên là cái phần ở giữa ấy, đôi khi nó sẽ bị sai 1-2 frame, nhưng mà mình chỉ cần make sure rằng là frame đầu, frame cuối nó trùng nhau là được rồi. Đó. Zoom in lên. Đằng trước. Đó. Đó, các bạn thấy không? Thì nó là một cái chức năng rất là hay mà mình muốn chia sẻ lại tới các bạn. Đó. Khi mà các bạn nhìn trực quan này nó rất là khó nhìn thì mình mở những cái mode ở đây lên để mình nhìn. Rất là tiện. Rồi, thì bài hôm nay của mình đến đây thôi. Thì cảm ơn mọi người.